This is a video. This is a day that I have been waiting for my entire adult life. Actually, like this is a day I have been waiting for my entire adult life. Uzbekistan has qualified for the World Cup. Okay. just had to break it down for a second because Uzbekistan, a nation that basically nobody can find on a map, nobody really knows exists, but real ball knowers, I'm not going to pretend I'm a real ball knower, but people passionate about this sort of thing know they've been super close to the World Cup for a long time. They finally made it. They deserve this so much. They've qualified with a match to spare. They did it before the last round. I mean, this is taking care of your fucking business. They got it done early. They got it done efficiently. They got it done. They finally got it done. The Tottenham of Asian qualifying has finally made it. Now, the first World Cup qualifying that I ever followed, all right, was World Cup qualifying 2006. And I looked it up retroactively. I was like 8 years old when this was happening, right? But I looked it up retroactively because I got a World Cup 2006 video game. And one of the teams that stood out to me was obviously Bahrain, but also Uzbekistan. Okay, because in 2006, Uzbekistan made it to the Asian playoff. If you win that, you go to the Intercontinental playoff. And the Intercontinental playoff this time around was against Trinidad and Tobago, who beat Bahrain 2-1 on aggregate. Right, but Uzbekistan, I mean, that's a totally winnable tie. They got that close, right? They got that close to making it. They finished behind Saudi Arabia and South Korea in the qualifying section, but that's, I mean, for a team that had never made it, for a team from a part of the world that has never produced a World Cup team before. I want you to think about that. Central Asia, never produced a World Cup team before. A lot of countries in there. Never won. Right, they've invested in the league, they've invested in player development, and they have been building this national team really since the fall of the Soviet Union into one that could produce the type of team that could make it to the World Cup. And they could have made it in 2006, but they came up just short. They made it to the final round of qualifying again in 2010, but they actually had, in my opinion, their worst qualifying effort ever. They ended up finishing bottom in their group, a full 6 points out of the playoff position, which was taken by Saudi Arabia, who ended up going to the World Cup. And then Bahrain, look, I feel bad for Bahrain. They ended up losing to New Zealand in the Interconfederation playoffs, so Bahrain made it 2 times in a row. But you know what? They didn't make the World Cup this time. Uzbekistan did. You know who made it back to the Asian playoff in 2014? That's right, 2 Asian playoffs in 3 years. There are 2 Asian playoffs in 3 qualifying cycles. It was Uzbekistan again. And at this point, by 2014, I was fully emotionally invested. I'm like, damn, Uzbekistan is close again. Surely they're going to do it. They lose a penalty shootout, 9-8. They lose a penalty shootout, 9-8 to Jordan. Jordan then goes and gets absolutely destroyed by Uruguay. It was 0-0 with Jordan at home, but at Uruguay, they lost 5-0. So, Jordan was completely found out having to match up against Uruguay in the Interconfederation playoff, or Intercontinental playoff, as I like to call it. But Uzbekistan was once again just a hop, skip, and a jump from actually being able to make it to the World Cup. They go to the Intercontinental playoff. You go into the draw. You don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, I'm not going to pick this Uzbekistan team against Uruguay, but I mean, they're on the doorstep again, right? And I just want to point out, by the way, I'm missing like the craziest part of this. They missed qualification for the World Cup by technically two goal difference, because even if they, did have a +6, they would have had 12 goals for, and then South Korea would have gone to the World Cup on goals for. But I mean, come on. They were 2 points off the top of the group. They had the same number of points as South Korea in 2014. 2014 World Cup qualifying. That's why I've been on this bandwagon for so long, because this team is capable. This team is good. I don't know how this team hadn't managed to make it to the World Cup by this point. You go into 2018 in Uzbekistan, had the same shit happen again. They missed the World Cup by 2 points to South Korea. 2 points away. And they missed the Asian playoff on goal difference. For the second straight time, they've been denied the threshold above them by goal difference. And then in that playoff, it was Australia that ended up actually going all the way through. Australia beat Syria in extra time in the second leg and then beat Honduras in the Intercontinental Playoff to go to the World Cup, which Australia is like the opposite of Uzbekistan. They put together just the results that they need, somehow always end up in some sort of playoff and then somehow go through. Huge congratulations to them for just beating Japan, as Australia has all but guaranteed qualification. By the time this video comes out, I'm almost sure that they will have. They have to lose by 5 goals to Saudi Arabia in the last match day to blow it. And that would be a stunner. If that happens, there will be a Zealandism about it. But I think at this point, you now see that in 3 of the last 4 World Cup qualifyings by 2018, Uzbekistan has been right there. Fucking close. I mean, look, the Bahrain's not even here anymore. They had a golden generation, but they're gone. Right? They made those 2 intercontinental playoffs, but now they're not here. Uzbekistan's always fucking here. Always getting to this point, trying to do something. And then in 2022, Uzbekistan gets mollywopped by a ridiculous group. All right, they end up in a group with Saudi Arabia, the same Saudi Arabia team that would go on in this World Cup cycle to beat Argentina. They end up with 15 points, which there is a second place table that those 15 points, when you remove the lowest team, puts them not going to the next round of World Cup qualifying by a point. They finished second behind Saudi Arabia. They didn't get enough points in this second place, and that's because they lost a match. Now, you might be wondering, what match did they lose? They lost at Palestine. And why is this a super unfortunate draw? Palestine, in the next Asian Cup after this qualifying, made the last 16. They're one of the 16 best teams in Asia. What the fuck are they doing here as the 3rd team in this group? That's why it's brutal. They won every other match. They lost their 2 matches to Saudi Arabia, and they lost to Palestine. That was the match that knocked them out. If they had drawn that match, they would have gone through to the 3rd round, and who knows what happens. But in 2022, I was a little afraid, because even though hindsight proved that this was a difficult group and this is the best Palestine team probably ever, right, that made the Asian Cup knockouts, that is, as of this recording, threatening to qualify for the Asian playoff in World Cup qualifying this time around, I thought Uzbekistan, after finally missing out on the final round of Asian qualifying for the first time in forever, that they were falling backwards. Which brings us, fortunately, to this year. World Cup, I didn't actually pull this up for some reason, qualifying 2026. World Cup qualifying 2026, Asia, got to be a little bit more specific, there we go. And here you find Uzbekistan at long last. At long last, they did it. So Asia obviously switched up its qualifying. Asia gets 8 spots instead of 4.5. Sorry, they get 8.5 spots now. But Uzbekistan did not need those. Because in this group, basically the entire time, a group that is full of pitfalls, the UAE is legit. In World Cup qualifying in 2022, the UAE was in it till basically the last match. And Qatar are like the reigning Asian champions. All right, they're unkillable in the Asian Cup. They just suck in World Cup qualifying. Who knows why, right? Both of those teams would have been in with a very good chance to take a spot from Uzbekistan, but Uzbekistan did enough. They just got over the line. They got the right results. It was, I don't want to say magic. I don't want to say a miracle. And by the way, they just finished a conclusive 3-0 victory at home against Qatar, which is why they're currently sitting at the top of the group waiting for Iran to play. But it was the previous match that actually got them qualification. The previous match being a 0-0 draw at the United Arab Emirates. And it was ugly. They were not the better team in this game. The United Arab Emirates had better chances. They had more of the ball, but Uzbekistan played like their lives depended on it. I'm not going to lie. I watched a part of this game. I was on a hike in like rural Sweden. I watched a part of this game, and I was worried it looked like Uzbekistan was going to bottle it again. One thing I took away while I was watching this match, though, there were so many Uzbekistan fans there. I mean, it was packed house. The UAE obviously needed to win. If they won, then that put a ton of pressure on the final match day for UAE to try and get that automatic spot instead of Uzbekistan. Basically, if the UAE won, they were a point behind going into the last match day with an easy final match. That was the plan for UAE. But there was a huge, passionate, loud contingent of Uzbekistan fans that they're, away into the stadium. The atmosphere for this game was absolutely fantastic. And they went nuts at full time.
This is the moment, Uzbeks.
I mean, you got your CNN narrator popping up there. They went nuts at full time. And that really brought this home to me because this whole shit with the White Wolves and rooting for Uzbekistan and them basically being the best team that never made a World Cup just based off results. It's them or Mali from Africa, like Yves Bissouma's team, right? It's one of those two nations that are the best teams that have never made a World Cup. But now that they're there, and you get to see the fans and all the players are on the field breaking down and crying. Particularly the goalkeeper had an absolutely amazing match, by the way. He was tremendous. That brought it home for me. I love new teams going to the World Cup because something that I've learned traveling, right, is that I come from the United States. We dominate the headlines. Right, and I'm not saying this in a narcissistic way. I mean, like if you go to somewhere, most countries in the world that you go to, you open up the news, there's going to be at least one story that some weird shit happened in the United States or some political thing or whatever, right? Like there's just, the United States dominates the headlines. A lot of countries in the world, you don't really get to see your country on the stage. You don't. I mean, it's surreal for me. It was 2014 World Cup to watch Americans, to watch the U.S. national team play against Portugal and Cristiano Ronaldo, to play against Germany. When I watch the U.S. play against Messi and Argentina in a Copa America, right? That sort of stuff is wild for me. How do you think it feels for somebody from Uzbekistan or Mali? Or how about Jordan? They're the other team that qualified. They're also going to their first ever World Cup. The team that beat Uzbekistan in that penalty shootout only to get smacked by Uruguay. They qualified on the same day based off their win and results elsewhere. So it's not just Uzbekistan, it's Jordan that has clinched a spot in the World Cup for the first time. To be from these countries and to see your nation get on that stage, be able to represent you in that way. That's special. It also continues a really ridiculous streak, like an insane streak, of there being a debutante at every World Cup ever. That sounds like a made-up, impossible stat, but it's true. It barely survived the last one. I'm pretty sure Qatar, as the hosts, were the only debutante. But now that we've expanded to 48, I think we'll probably be getting at least one and multiple debutantes on for a lot of successive sessions afterwards. Qualifying sections or World Cups or however you want to refer to it afterwards. The World Cup is better when new teams get there. And no new team is going to have earned it more. Like Jordan earned it. But Uzbekistan really earned it. Their fans have been looking at this for 20 years thinking almost, and almost is over. I'm so freaking happy for Uzbekistan. And now I'm happy for all these fans because their vibe was fantastic too.